Hi everyone, welcome. I am Kim Beegler, owner of Ewethful Fiber Farm and Mill, and I'm sitting here in the mill today, and I'm coming to you for a quick, in case you don't know, we are starting a spin to knit or crochet or weave along tomorrow on New Year's Eve. So, and if you don't watch this until after, that's okay. You can start later. But I wanted to come on and just make sure all of our YouTube family knew. We did talk about it in the newsletter, and I posted it on Instagram. And I did an audio podcast all about it, plus some tips on actually spinning the yarn you want for a project. So if you haven't tuned into any of those places, find one of them in the show notes. Get on my newsletter and definitely listen to the Handspun, the audio podcast, because I think it'll help inspire you and maybe give you some ideas of how to spin for a project. So that's all I'm doing today. I don't have any mill videos because I've been down with a sprained ankle and it's the holidays and all that stuff. So I will come back to you very soon with one of those. But I wanted to run through a little bit about the spin along and the patterns that we picked out, knitting patterns that we picked out as a suggestion to go with. So we are starting and we're doing a Zoom live spin along tomorrow on New Year's Eve, 5 p.m. Pacific time, hopefully, as long as I'm not running late. And you can get in on that for free by joining. You have to join my Patreon community, but you can join as a free member. And the link is there now. So just join into Patreon, or you're welcome to become a higher level member and get in on some of the extra fun and early bird specials and workshops that I do on Patreon. We just did a plying workshop yesterday, and it was a lot of fun. So head to Patreon if you want to get into the Start Your Spinning tomorrow, New Year's Eve, 5 p.m. Pacific time. Okay, so what are we doing? We are spinning to knit or weave or crochet. Like I said, you have to pick out those. I just am not a good crocheter. So patterns and weaving, those things are beyond my skill set. But if you're going to do that, please let us know so others maybe can join you with what you're doing. But we're starting with spinning. And there's 3 patterns. You could do any fiber you want. This is like free for all. And the patterns really fluctuate as far as weights of yarn. So you could go to your default yarn. You could try to challenge yourself a little bit with your spinning. I personally am going to challenge myself a little bit, not so much with my spinning, but with my fiber prep. So whatever works for you. The idea of this really is to bring community together. As my friend Wendy would remind me constantly, even it's just like set in me. I don't say it out loud anymore, but to bring community together, to inspire each other, to finish a project, and maybe most importantly, I don't know, community might be first, to use our hand spun yarn, because there are a lot of spinners out there, and I know a lot of them, and sometimes it's me too. We spin all this beautiful yarn, but then we don't use it. So let's use that yarn, right? So let me show you the patterns that we have picked out. There is a mittens, a hat, and a little kerchief. All have kind of something fun different to them. So here is the hat. This is Jason's cashmere hat. Hopefully it won't. Yes, there we go. So this is fun because it's got cable pattern. It's got a cable to it. So if you haven't cabled before, this would be a great hat to start with. And you can get all the details. This is on Ravelry. You could also head to their websites. I think for most people, this is by Thompson. I'll put the patterns in the show notes. And this calls for about 200 yards of yarn. So I think this is the smallest as far as yardage, Aran weight. So not bad, right? That's pretty, I'm not going to say simple, but it won't take too long to spin that up. And okay, so you can find that one. And so the fun part of that, right, is that it's got some cabling, something to spice it up. So if you haven't cabled before, maybe that's where you're going to go. Okay, the mittens, I have knit these before. I knit them before in Sestari, not in Handspun. I did knit them as a store sample, but still. So this is the World's Simplest Mittens by Tin Can Knits. You gotta love a good Tin Can Knits pattern. I love mittens because my hands do not stay warm very well in gloves, I suppose is what you would say. My fingers need to be together to stay warm. And so I love Mittens. And these are, the wonderful thing about Tin Can Knits is they make things so, like there's a million different, so you could just do kids mittens if you don't feel like committing too much. But you can basically use yarn weights and pretty much any yarn weight. And so that makes it easy. If you want to just go to your default yarn, do it. And you could probably figure out a size and the weight to make these mittens. And for these you need, if you're doing the toddler, you need 70 yards, upwards of 300 yards. Not bad, right? Okay. And then our last one is the Ritual Kerchief. This is by Caitlin Hunter. And there it is. So this one, fun, because it has bobbles. I believe this one they did hold with, or at least I know some people, I'll be honest, I didn't really read this too much, but I think some people were going to hold their yarn with like a mohair silk to get that fuzzy effect. This one is, the yardage starts at 280 and it goes up to 2000, really depending on the size. It also is gauge flexible. So, it's great for handspun. So those, if you haven't worked with your handspun before, patterns where there is more flexibility in the yarn size, the yarn weight, that's going to make it easier with handspun a bit. I do talk a lot in the Handspun podcast, the audio podcast, about some tips I have for how to spin to get the yarn you want, including fiber content and things like that. Because of course, if you knit something that is, the pattern calls for 100% wool and you knit it on 100% alpaca, your outcome's gonna be pretty different if you spun that alpaca and then knit it in that, even if you did the same weight. So there's a bunch of tips in that, and I go a little bit more into these patterns. So okay, so those are the 3 patterns. I will put the link in the show notes. We are going to start spinning tomorrow. We're kicking it off tomorrow, New Year's Eve. If you are looking for an excuse to stay up or maybe to keep you up a little longer, especially I thought this is the one time I could maybe get some of my East Coasters to be up at night. And also maybe, I don't know, there could be some people like in Europe that are waiting for the ball to drop and they need something to do right after, right around then. So depending on where you are, hopefully you can make this happen and come join us. So you need to head to the Patreon. I will put a link in the show notes to get to the Patreon page where you can just click become a free member. Or of course, I always appreciate the extra support, and you do get some fun things if you are in my Patreon community. So think about that, but become a free member. There is also a Ravelry in the Ewethful group. We have a post that you can go on there and we can start sharing and what you're spinning and things like that. So you can, I'll put a link to the show notes there. So let's do this, right? Let's spin to knit along or weave or crochet or whatever you want to do with your yarn. Let's just be a community and inspire each other and use what we're making. So I hope that I will see some of you in the Zoom tomorrow. But like I said, don't worry about when you start, just start. It could be on the 5th of January, nobody cares. This is all very low stress and we're aiming to have it done by the end of February. So you have 2 months to spin, probably essentially about 4 ounces of fiber, and to make up your finished project. And of course, there will not be, a big downfall. But if you are one of my paying Patreon subscribers, there will be a gift for everybody that participates, and I'm gonna say finishes by the end of February. I have 3 levels in my Patreon community. Each level I'll have a gift for one person in each level that finishes, and I'll just like pick randomly out of a hat. So that's a perk of being in the Patreon community too. So, hey, okay, that's it. That's all I've got this week. I will be back to you next week with fiber. I am starting to be more mobile again, thank goodness, and I am ready to make some fiber for you all. So until next time, first off, happy 2025. Let's do this, right? And in 2025, let's stay healthy, be kind to everybody around you, and make so many pretty things. And let's start tomorrow together. Okay, see you soon. Thank you so much for watching.